Today, it's my pleasure to be speaking with Erik Rankin and Patrick Cortesi, two great minds from Bloomington Normal and two staunch Democrats. Erik Rankin is a beloved professor of government and politics at Illinois State University, while Patrick Cortesi is the chairman of the McLean County Democrats. Today, we will discuss national topics like the Great Red Wave that wasn't, and President Joe Biden's cognitive health, and local topics like local taxes, and the 91st District's new Democratic Representative, Sharon Chung, as well as other fun topics like abortion. It's going to be very interesting, and I can't wait to get started. I'd like to kindly ask if you find this episode educational or entertaining, please don't hesitate to hit that like button, leave a comment, share this video, and also subscribe on YouTube, follow me on Facebook, and subscribe on the podcast platforms. Before we begin this conversation, I'd like to take a quick moment to thank our beloved sponsors with these very short commercials. We'll play them all right now, one after another, so as not to interrupt the flow of the conversation later. You can skip them if you're heartless, but I personally think there's some great local commercials myself, and they make this show possible. If you'd like to become a sponsor of this show or have me make a commercial for you, like these, email me at info@thepaulgarciashow.com. We've got a gym, an insurance provider, a pizza place, and a furniture store coming at you now. Stick around, we'll be right back in 2 minutes. If you've been living with an aching back, debilitating imbalances, or any physical discomfort and just want to get back to living a fit and happy life, look no further than InMotion Fitness Center and Outpatient Therapy at Fairview Haven in Fairbury, Illinois. Our highly skilled therapy team will guide you through proven and effective exercises to help you regain your strength, movement, and mobility, all with our renowned level of love and care. Live your best life. Call our therapy team at 815-692-6724 to find out how we can serve you today. Choosing insurance can be complicated and daunting. That's why you need to call Pam Deaton with Health Markets. Pam will help you with all of your insurance needs, including health, life, vision, dental, and disability insurance. She's consistently been one of Health Markets' top national agents over the years and continues to earn great reviews from her clients. If you or a loved one needs to find the right insurance plan, you're in the right hands with Pam. Call her at 309-287-2518 to see how she can help you today. Fairbury Furniture in Fairbury, Illinois has added over 7,000 square feet to their showroom, and that means more selection for you. Why wait for your furniture? You can buy anything on the showroom floor and take it home today. So hop in the car and take the short drive to Fairbury Furniture, where customers love their selection, pricing, and their take-it-home-today power. So many Bloomington Normal residents have made Fairbury Furniture their favorite furniture store, just 26 minutes away in downtown Fairbury.
Hurry down to Fairbury Furniture, where the furniture rocks.
I love pizza, especially pizza from Marchelloni's Pizza in Fairbury, Illinois. Experience Marchelloni's Pizza and their famous cheese nuggets for an amazing price when you order today. If you call them up at 815-692-4602 between 4 and 5 p.m. and order a pizza, you will get the second pizza of equal or lesser value for free. Restrictions apply. You can even pick up that order after the 4 to 5 p.m. window and still get that happy hour discount. As a pizza connoisseur myself, I will proudly say that my favorite barbecue chicken pizza is from Marchelloni's, so check them out. 815-692-4602. Pick it up at 405 East Locust Street in Fairbury. They're open 7 days a week from 4 to 9 p.m. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Paul Garcia Show. I'm your host, Paul Garcia. Today, it's my pleasure to be talking to, you already know, Erik Rankin and Patrick Cortesi. Erik is a professor at Illinois State University of Government and Politics. Yep. And Patrick, you are the chairman of the McLean County Democrats. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Thanks for having us on. We're really glad to be here.
Absolutely.
Hey, of course. The pleasure is all mine. So, guys, let's start with this. Not too long ago, we just had a great red wave that wasn't. What in the world happened? Even Democrats, it seemed, were saying on all levels, local and federal, that there's going to be one, but there just wasn't. What did we do wrong? What did we do wrong? There you go. I'm putting myself on the conservative side a little bit. What did we do wrong?
Well, I'll speak to the local side. And, Erik, you can give maybe a little history of why this should have happened on a state or federal level. But on the local side, I think a lot of it had to do with candidate quality. I think we had the better ground game. I think we had better ideas. And I think we ran a really, really good, smart campaign. And I think we outworked them. Honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Patrick's right on all accounts. From a national perspective, it's even written more large. Obviously, the Republican Party struggled greatly to recruit good candidates. They are still a party that is gripped by Donald Trump. Donald Trump has done a great job of picking some very poor candidates. And that really hurt. At the same time, it's interesting. So just in terms of poor candidate choice, being out-hustled by the Democrats, sometimes a party can rest on the laurels of, well, we're supposed to. The sitting president's party that controls all levers of government, it should traditionally revert to the other party in a midterm election. Almost always it does. And this was a shock. I think sometimes you can rest on the fact, well, things are going to be great for us, and because they weren't. And I think that also don't take away the fact that the Republican Party is doing a lot of soul searching itself. It's, the Democrats for the first time in a very long time are pretty unified in terms of their message. They may not love a specific candidate, they may not love a specific direction, but the Democrats are fairly unified. Where the Republican Party, they can't figure out who they are right now. How do they move past Trump? How do they move past the a lot of the baggage that comes along with him? And they're just not doing a very good job of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very interesting. I have a lot to say there. First thing, though, go ahead and turn that microphone. I should have said something beforehand. Aim the tip of that thing. There you go. There you go. Now,
too much me? Is that what it was?
You know what?
I'm trying to here. Mold me, my friend.
There we go.
Mold me.
Okay.
There we go. Too much in my mouth?
Right. It was too much of the plosive.
Ooh, yeah.
There you go. You sound great now, like an ESPN commentator.
There we go.
But,
awesome.
Okay. Something I want to ask about is, do you think Republicans, if you were, put yourself in a Republican's shoes, if you wanted the best for your party, would you say, guys, it's time to move on from Trump? Or would you say, hey, this is where a lot of your fuel comes from. You had such a great following. The Republicans really love Trump. Maybe stick with it a little longer, but maybe he's got to change. Or would you just say, ditch him altogether if you want to win?
If I'm a Republican, especially a local Republican, I'm moving past this stuff because he's done nothing for here in McLean County, nothing in the state of Illinois. Trumpism is lost 3-4 elections in a row. They have a base, a small base, and they're always going to. But that's never going to be enough to win an election, and they've never been able to expand that base. So if I'm a local Republican and I want to start winning some elections, you got to find another way to do it.
Maybe even a more general question is, could the Republican Party in the state of Illinois be any more irrelevant? And it's their fault they're irrelevant. And don't listen to me, a left-leaning liberal Democrat telling you that. Listen to the Jim Edgars. Listen to other moderate voices, the Mark Kirks, who are saying, even Jason Barrickman and Adam Kinzinger, we can't win statewide elections if we continue to hew towards the Donald Trump mentality. That is a surefire loser, unless you are in downstate Illinois. And even then, you see pockets of downstate Illinois that are rejecting it all across the board. It is a terrible choice on their part, which is why I hope and pray they stay with it. As a partisan, right? Donald Trump is the gift that keeps on giving to the Democratic Party. He just truthfully is. So I'm a big Trump supporter when it comes time to being a Democrat. I hope he stays around for as long as he possibly can.
Really?
I think the fact that, let's talk statewide real good, that we ran against a slate of Trumpism candidates, right? Darren Bailey and all the way down that ballot. There's a reason why McLean County voted for JB, first time for a Democratic governor since 1948. There was a nice blue belt of JB states, or counties, running right down 74, right? Tammy Duckworth won McLean County. It's the first time a Senate candidate has won McLean County in, I don't know, a dozen years?
Yep.
Something like that?
Yep.
First time we've got a state rep going to Springfield, a Democratic state rep since 1982.
And Sharon Chung, right?
Yep, Sharon Chung, right? There's a reason why those happen. Again, they're really good quality candidates. They've got good track records to run on. Their ground game was amazing. They were well supported. we were unified as a party. I mean, all that plays into it. But let's not discount the fact that they were running against some pretty bad candidates.
What do you think about, start with this. Is there any grounds, and Erik, I know we've talked about it a little bit, for election integrity? A lot of Trump supporters do say that the election may have been rigged. Do you think there's any chance?
This last one?
Yeah, the presidential
here
election.
in town, or
no, I'm
okay,
sorry.
gotcha.
About
You're talking nationally.
I'm going to just jump in. I did notice on social media the other day that our local Republican Party was establishing an election integrity commission, and they're going to have their first meeting next week. This drives me nuts. Our elections locally are run by Republicans.
They are.
Right? They control the Bloomington Election Commission. Kathy Michael's a Republican county clerk. So if they're worried about local election integrity, they've only got themselves to look at.
Right. And not only, I mean, Kathy Michael isn't just a Republican. She's like one of the Republicans. And I know if Kathy or any of her supporters are listening, here's a compliment. Kathy has done a very good job of running elections in McLean County. I don't have really that I can think of any major complaints about how elections have been administered here in McLean County. Some of the setup to things and some of the discussions beforehand, but on election day, how mail-in ballots are counted and tabulated. I mean, the organization is run very well. So if you have any worries about that, then again, the Republicans can look to their own party because the Democrats don't have anything to do with that.
Sure. When it comes to the local elections, I haven't heard anything. I'm sure there are people out there speculating that, hey, maybe there's some unfair play going on even at the local level. But more nationally, I know a lot of people that think surely this was rigged. Yeah. You look at the Trump rallies, you look at the Biden rallies, and granted, what we see in the media is tailored to what we want to see and what we hope to see. And a lot of conservatives will really like seeing a sparse front row at a Biden rally. Just in that one shot, maybe it's a still image. It looks pretty good. It's like, aha, he is not popular. He doesn't get the crowd going. His crowds are small. No way he won this election. I see what they're saying, but I personally don't see adequate evidence at all that there might have been any election fraud. And plus, it'd be really hard to do that. But at the same time, I do say that it is possible technically. Why? Because so much of it's online. So not online. So much of it is on, computers. Computers can be hacked. I would assume easier than, if you had to rewrite ballots and make fake ballots and then send those in. If it is all electronic, certainly that opens the gates for hacking and misentering. I don't know how the results from a local area go to the federal level, but I would assume it's you report it by typing in the numbers and then hitting send. I don't know. You guys let me know.
Can I give you
wait, let me ask one question
sure.
Here. Is it possible? Could it happen?
It's next to impossible. Again, you can't say anything with 100% certainty. Every situation is built into some level of uncertainty. Absolutely. The way that the system has been designed, it has so many different fail-safes and mechanisms that are a part of it. It is almost impossible to do so. Voter fraud is a myth. It exists. Actual prosecuted voter fraud instances is like, I can't remember the statistic, it's like 0.0004% of all votes were found to be fraudulent. It's not a thing. The people that cry about stolen elections are like that kid that you play like in the neighborhood when you played Foursquare or basketball, and because he kept losing, he kept crying that you were cheating. It's interesting how only people who are losing are turning around saying, well, I was robbed. What happened to the situations in the past where there were Democrats and Republicans? This crying that the election has been stolen is a brand new thing. It used to be that both Democrats and Republicans, that calling and conceding to your opponent the night of or the next morning was standard. That you win some, you lose some. That's how politics works. It's always worked like that. But yes, looking at this idea that it is possible for an election to have some fraudulent activity, of course that's always going to be the case. But it is so outside of the realm of reality that it taints people's understanding of democracy. And if you continue to believe that, well, my vote doesn't count, it's just going to be stolen anyway, it's actually going to end up hurting your own party, because fewer people are going to turn out because they don't trust in the integrity of elections. We have to continue to talk about our elections. This may be out of this election and the last couple, this is what worries me more than anything. And it's, to be fair, this is purely a Republican talking point. I don't know of any situations where when a Democrat has lost the race that they've started to cry that it was stolen from them. They just, one of the biggest, think of Al Gore in 2000, right? When Al Gore had probably legitimate reasons to say that he probably won that election. And don't take my word for it. Take legal scholars, take others on both sides of the aisle that looked at it and said that there were some real issues in Dade County with ballots and the way that they were designed. But what did he do the day after the Supreme Court decision? He called and conceded the race and never said another word about it.
And that's how you think it should be done. That's how most people should think it should be done.
That's how adults act.
Right. And then, the 2020 elections, they brought, 65 different cases before courts disputing election results. And Trump team lost all 65 court cases. So there was zero concrete evidence that any voter fraud happened.
And Patrick, before some of the listeners say, well, that's because of a bunch of leftist judges, how many of the judges were leftists that were rendering those decisions?
I'm going to say you can probably count it on one hand.
Yeah, next to none. They were Trump appointed. It's, if there is a conspiracy, just as Patrick said before, if there was a conspiracy, you're pointing to your own party as part of the conspirators in it. That's what happened in Georgia. That's what happened in Arizona. These were Republican secretaries of state. These were Republican judges that were hearing these cases. These weren't Democrats doing that. And I have found that in a lot of those places, those secretaries of states, they have integrity. Their whole entire Kathy Michaels' reputation is staked on whether or not she runs an above-the-board election. That's her reputation, which is why she does a good job at it, is because she realizes that that's what stakes her reputation. And so it didn't matter if you had then other people in the Republican Party that were saying, well, we lost, so therefore this is this was stolen from us. Carrie Lake in Arizona is probably the worst offender of this right now. She telegraphed her punch before before the election was even over. If I lose, the only way that I could lose is if I'm cheated.
And that's a page right out of the Trump
really
playbook,
weird.
right? Because Trump did the same thing.
Yep.
Well, that's it. Trust me. This is one thing that I think is so strange about Donald Trump's campaign now and for the last couple of years is your votes are being miscounted purposefully. The election system is rigged. It's fraudulent. Vote for me.
Right.
Well,
and so it's strange, but at the same time, there's reasons to like Trump. Even if I think I wouldn't hang out with them. Even if I wouldn't want my kids to resemble his character.
Would you explain to me what those are?
Yes.
Just out of pure curiosity.
Yeah. So it has to do with a lot of how he acts in comparison to other politicians. I personally cannot stand when I suspect someone is inauthentic because it makes me think they're a liar. It makes me think I can't trust them. It makes me think they're out of touch. They don't understand how I act, how I think, how me and the working class think, how normal people think. I think they're in it for weird reasons. Maybe feelings of power that they want to have, feelings of superiority. Maybe they just want to get in good with all these people. Weird psychological reasons that aren't good. When I see Trump, don't get me wrong, the guy likes power. He's probably narcissistic. He says things that are very mean. But that's kind of has to do with why I like him. Because, man, you talk like the people I worked with on a roof not too long ago. You talk authentically. You don't read a teleprompter all the time. You seem real, you seem brash, you seem honest in a lot of ways. And I really like that. And not only that, he also stands with a lot of my values, my Christian values, my Catholic values even. He speaks about the pro-life issue in a really nice way. And he's also tough. And man, I'm a wrestler, lifelong wrestler. I really love that tough guy look. He shakes hands with people and he yanks them in. It's weird. But at least he's not getting yanked in. And I kind of like that. I like having a powerful leader that talks tough, that stands tough on the global stage. So those are some of the reasons why.
So let's Patrick and I go back. We're gonna go. I
There's
think
a lot to unpack.
Yeah, this would be great. Let's go back and
Are
forth.
you okay
on
having
it.
this conversation?
Of course,
Yeah.
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
Cool. So I'll start just because the first one's sticking in my head that he's tough. If he's tough, how come he whines about everything that doesn't go his way? How come if an election doesn't go his way, he complains about it? How come if a vote doesn't go his way, he not only tears down the Democrats, but he tears down his own Republicans as well? How come if he's tough, he never accepts responsibility for anything? Let's talk about it from a very, this manly perspective. I've never met a man who can't accept responsibility, who says, hey, I made a mistake here. I was involved in this and I shouldn't have been. I apologize.
Right.
This man is so far from being tough in the actions. I believe you're correct in his words, but so too are WWE wrestlers. That's who Donald Trump is, in my estimation, when it comes time to a tough guy. He plays a tough guy, but he's actually not.
Well,
sorry.
Go ahead.
And I think that's the key part, right? He plays a role. And so that was going to be my issue. You talked about how you admired or appreciated his authentic self, right? That he relates to the common man. How? He is a billionaire, born to a billionaire, lived in New York City his entire life. He's never worked a menial job, ever. He is a carnival barker. He is a snake oil salesman. He will absorb or put forth any image or say any words that he thinks he needs to say to get you to buy his self, his products. He ran for president to make money. He was seriously in debt. He was about to get foreclosed on, and he figured out a way to monetize running for president. And then he got elected. He's like, oh, crap. Now what? Right? So then he figured out a way to monetize being president. And it's all about making money for himself.
And Paul, the other question that I like that you kind of posed, I talked to my students about this in class too, because I've had this with, and this actually exists on both sides of the aisle. Can we agree that governing is a skill, right? To be in government, to understand how government works, it's a skill. Some people are good at it. Some people just aren't good at it, right? Dan Brady, you've met the guy. He is a skillful politician. Dan Brady knows everybody. He knows laws. He knows rules. He knows regulations. He knows the processes of the General Assembly. He knows things. And he's actually been very good at his job. Right. It's a skill.
He has expertise in the multifaceted responsibilities of governing and how it's done, how to do it well, and everything like that. To say, agree or disagree, is it like a skill? I don't know. It's weird to say that because it's such a multifaceted skill. It's more of a whole thing. I don't know. Anyway,
but government,
I see what you're saying.
Government is a vast bureaucracy. It's infinitely complex, right? I mean, anybody that's tried to operate within the realm of government would realize that it is a difficult sphere to exist in.
Right.
Much like other things, much like being a roofer. I don't know the first thing about a roof. There's one on my house, but if you ask me to fix my roof, I can't do it. I don't know the first thing about a car. Fixing a car and understanding how cars operate, these are skills. Governing is a skill as well. I'm always struck by the fact that people look to politicians who, you hear, well, he's not really a politician, and I like that. But that means also that they don't know what they're talking about. They don't know how government operates. They don't know how government works. They don't have the skills that are requisite in their job. And I think you saw in Trump's first 4 years as president, you saw him stumble all the time. He said things left and right were things that he just couldn't do. And why did he say that? Because he didn't know that he couldn't do those things, because he didn't understand the job. And that is unique to Trump. I don't think I know of a single other Republican or Democratic presidential candidate that didn't understand the mechanisms with how government actually operated. This is why we tend to pick people that have experience in government. Now, there are some notable exceptions. J.B. Pritzker is a great example. Did not have any electoral experience beforehand. Or Bruce Rauner, not elected to any office prior to becoming, an elected representative. I'm okay with maybe lower level positions of you got to get experience somewhere. Mm-hmm. But do we really want a president of the United States to be learning on the job? Kind of makes me think that that's a super I would be worried if I went into my surgeon and my surgeon's like, never done this before, but we'll get her figured out. No, you might kill me. And the same thing might happen with our presidents. And that is, at the end of the day, one of the things that I'm struck by Republicans. The Republican Party, if you go back, remove Trump, look at every single Republican president since the modern presidency began, so FDR forward, every single one of those presidential candidates that won massive resumes, right? From the George W. Bush, who probably had the least resume, but at least he was a governor of one of the biggest states in the Union. Ronald Reagan was governor of California. Gerald Ford, Speaker of the House, in the Michigan General Assembly. You go on down the list, Richard Nixon, all of these. The Republican Party was the party of the resume. Mm. The Democrats were the ones where you kind of got people that came out of nowhere. Something shifted in the Republicans. And it's really interesting. Trump has forced the Republicans to become completely different from what they used to be. The last point I'm going to make, I'm sorry, I am way too much monopolizing this conversation.
That's what podcasts are for. Keep
Patrick
going, man.
Patrick is to talk way more than me after this. I too am, I struggle because when I hear people say that Donald Trump shares my values from a religious perspective, if that's the case, Donald Trump has done an incredible snow job on people. Maybe from the perspective as a Christian, he asks for forgiveness. Not that I've ever heard the man ask for forgiveness publicly in any sort of a way. But this is a guy who has lived his entire life as doing things that are patently un-Christian. I can't really think of anything, and I mean that seriously, anything that makes me think that he is an ideal Christian in any way, shape, or form.
Oh, neither can I. But I mean, heck, I'm not an ideal Christian.
Right. But and that's not. But Paul, I think you're attempting to do it. I don't think Trump has ever attempted to do that. This is a man who, if we were to rewind the Republican Party 20 years past and thrown the conservative movement of 20 years ago and asked them questions about his religiosity, Donald Trump is the definition of heathen. Donald Trump is the definition of everything that is anti-faith based, outside of the fact that he is a very imperfect human being who has done some pretty ridiculous things. Multiple marriages, again, never denied paying off porn stars, with hush money. The guy hasn't, spend a little bit of time at looking how many poor business practices he has been engaged in and how many lawsuits where people have said he has stiffed people out of money. He donates in philanthropy. And you're going to find this out in his tax returns that are going to be coming public at some point in time. Over the last 6 years, the guy donates very little to philanthropy. Even as a rich person, he doesn't do the things that typically you would see most Christians do. So that was one that I'm also. But what I'm impressed with Trump is that he's gotten even really rational, smart guys like you. He's been able to sell you in some sort of a way. It is impressive. If I can give Donald Trump any credibility or any kudos, it's he has sold a bill of goods, and people have bought those bill of
Look,
goods.
time out.
Right?
I'm not a big Trump supporter. I am not. I'm just saying, you asked me what I liked about
Yeah.
You.
You did. I did.
He looks tough when it's time to look tough. And you said tough. Yes, I said tough.
And is look tough or be tough? Which one would you prefer?
No. What you're describing is integrity.
Who's interviewing who now? I'm so sorry, Paul.
No,
Welcome
you're
to the Erik Rankin
perfectly
podcast.
fine. No, I love it. No, I love that. I love that. Integrity is what you're describing the man does not have.
Correct.
And I don't suggest that he does have that nearly as much anyway as his toughness.
Yeah.
I admire when the guy looks tough when it's time to look tough. On the global stage, I like the way the guy stands. I like the way he shakes hands. I like the way he speaks. Look, you guys probably hate when he talked about North Korea and he called him like Little Rocket Man, right? Kim Jong-un. And then he said he'd turn him into a parking lot. You know what? I kind of like that. As crazy as that is, I like the way he speaks. It makes America look strong in the public eye, like it or not. It's just words, but words are powerful when they're circulating all around the globe on TV. And then, like right now, this is my big thing with Biden. I mean, talk about the antithesis of looking tough and strong and able. When people around, I have to imagine in China and Russia, when they see Biden gaffing on television, it's probably more reassuring that, okay, we're fine. We're not really being threatened by the power and the strength of the America that was. I think they probably thought that way. They were more fearful when Trump was around. I really do think that, and I'm curious to hear if you guys agree with me there.
I think they were definitely more fearful because Trump didn't have any sort of common sense, right? I mean, you never knew what that guy was going to do. He's completely unpredictable. And I guess that could be seen as a show of strength. It made me a little nervous because you didn't know, right? Let's not forget, Trump is actually older than Biden, is he not?
No, he's not.
But they're similar in age?
They're similar, yes.
Mid-70s, something like that?
Yeah.
So
Trump is.
This caricature of Biden as this dawdling old man with a gaff machine, I don't know that President Trump was any better.
And Biden's always been like that.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. You go back and watch him talk when he was 40.
Wait,
he's
is this
the
supposed
same.
to help
he's
your
the,
point, though?
Listen, I'm just saying that's part of who he is. He's always been. He was known as the gaff machine.
Sure.
And Trump is a gaff machine too.
Well, that was good. That was my point. Yeah, exactly. But what I want to point out is Joe Biden has a long career, a long reputation of getting things done behind the scenes, of making those negotiations and getting stuff done without it being very public, without it.
He's more of a diplomat.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly. So just because he's not out there on social media every day being a blowhard doesn't mean he's not getting the work done.
Yeah.
I personally prefer the way Joe Biden gets that work done in terms of diplomacy than the way Trump did.
And you like boxing and UFC and whatnot, right?
I do. I love martial arts.
How many examples do you know where the guy that ran his mouth the most was the one that got knocked out in the most dramatic of fashions?
Well, yeah, that happens, but
talking a game is nothing. It's doing the game, right?
If you ask, though, like who can you remember times where someone talked a lot and then they got the knockout?
Sure.
A million names come to mind.
Yes, and what I'm saying is both approaches have some merit. They do. But remember, sometimes, which that's really called more hard power, right? Using your aggressive words. Oftentimes that creates more problems than it does solutions. I would argue, right, and your example was with Kim Jong-un. Do I think Kim Jong-un cares one bit that Donald Trump gave him a nickname? Kim Jong-un is nuts. He is certifiably nuts. I don't think that he's afraid of Donald Trump. I don't think he's afraid of anything.
You don't?
I think the guy is nuts. I really don't.
I think he was afraid. I think he didn't like that Trump called him that. I really do.
But has North Korea attacked anybody while Biden's been president? Did he attack anybody while Obama was president? The results are still the same. Talk big game or don't talk a big game. Nothing really. This is the worst part of men, right? Listen, we're three guys sitting here. We can say, like, we sometimes talk big games. Is it ever necessary? Is it a good thing to do? I don't want my president, any president, I don't care if it's Democrat or Republican, I don't want him calling other people names. That's what children do, right? That's what, I mean, when I was a kid, I made fun of other people or other people made fun of me. Like, that's just what we do. That's a sign of immaturity. Adults charged with serious jobs don't call people little rocket man. Like, that's just...
Well, it's kind of funny, wasn't
could you... I mean, it may be humorous, but could you imagine Ronald Reagan doing that?
No.
Ronald Reagan would have never
Sure,
done
right,
something like that, or George W. Bush or George H.W. Bush.
It's funny if I'm sitting at the bar at Luca.
Totally.
Right?
Right?
If I'm sitting in the White House, not so much.
No.
And I think and I don't want to get too far down this global politics thing, but the other thing that I think Joe Biden has done a much better job of, because of what we're just talking about, is bringing in our allies, right? Creating a more unified global presence. Let's look at what's going on in the Ukraine, right? Mm-hmm. I don't think if Donald Trump is president, we have that unified approach to dealing with Ukraine the way we see now. And I think it's because of that things are, I don't want to say they're going okay, but that situation, I think, would have been a lot worse with somebody like a Donald Trump as president. I think the fact that Joe Biden was able to bring in our NATO allies and we're attacking, we're confronting that situation as a unified front, speaks to what we were just talking about Joe Biden's diplomacy.
Mm-hmm. Well, on the topic of Joe Biden, just a little bit, you both mentioned how he has always been a gaffe machine, for lack of a better term. What do you think about President Joe Biden's mental health, his cognitive health, rather, right now? What do you think? Is it a concern? Is there any reason to be concerned about our president's cognitive health?
I'm not concerned. Are you?
I am Professor Rankin. I am not Doctor of Psychiatry Rankin. I have no idea. Do I think that, sometimes, I mean, if you play back this video already, I have sometimes stumbled over my words and tried to get things out and haven't been completely clear about things. I think that's a human trait. Yes, let's be honest. If what you're going for is, are you concerned that he's an 80-year-old man who may be in some state of cognitive decline? Yes. Almost all people that are elderly are in some state of cognitive decline, without a doubt. Does that mean that they don't have the ability to do a job? No. I think that they do. Should there be concerns? I don't have the concern. I didn't actually have, I had plenty of concerns about Donald Trump when he was president. I didn't have any concerns about his age. Like, I wasn't going, oh, he's 72, like, he can't do the job. Like, that's not what I was worried about. Again, also, I would say anybody that is worried about him and his gaffes and the way he talks, please go back and look at videos from him 40 years ago. He is talking in very similar ways 40 years ago. He's freakishly consistent. It's just now more people are paying attention to him, where people weren't paying attention to Senator Biden as much, obviously, because he was one of 100 40 years ago. So he's always been like this.
And I don't know that I really like the double standard.
No.
Right? The same people who were fine with our previous president making all his gaffes and stumbles and mumbling and bumbling all over the place, now all of a sudden are worried about President Biden doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So I mean, we can have this conversation, but I think in 2024 I would prefer to see a younger candidate on the Democratic side. I appreciate what Joe Biden has done, but I think I'd be all for somebody a little younger taking on that role. Not because Joe Biden can't. I just think with the people that we want to come out to vote, they're going to want to see a younger candidate.
And I can't say as if I disagree with Patrick in any way, shape, or form of this. Even students in my class are like, so you're just a big Joe Biden fan? I'm like, never said that. Does he light my world on fire? He does not. Are there plenty of other Democrats that I would much rather see as president of the United States? Yeah.
Like who?
For me personally, and I bet you Patrick's going to jump right on top of this one too. I'm a big Mayor Pete fan. Pete Buttigieg is just someone that I have a deep amount of respect for a whole bunch of reasons. Young, vet, he's gay, which isn't a qualifying factor. I don't care what your sexual orientation is in any way, shape, or form. I think that it would be awesome to have someone that is not as traditional as what we've had beforehand. He's just smart. I mean, and for me, there's where it is, right? My number one reason when I go to vote for anybody, is this person smart enough to do the job? Right? And I'm not saying that Joe Biden's not smart. I want to make sure that is very clear when I say that, because I thought that Biden was smarter than Trump. Again, not a super huge hurdle to jump over. Sorry, that's mean. But Mayor Pete, I mean, the guy goes on Fox News more regular than any Democrat I know.
You got to respect that.
I do. I mean, I used to have that question all the time when, other Dems would ask me, why do I continually go on Cities 92.9? I don't care. I'll talk about my thoughts and my feelings as being a Democrat no matter who it is. It doesn't matter if it's, do I agree with hardly any of the viewpoints of Cities 92.9? No, I don't. But will I go and sit and talk on the radio station? Yes, because we're adults, and adults have conversations with one another. And Mayor Pete does that.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Mayor Pete. Have been for a long time, even when he was mayor. I've got friends who live in South Bend, and they couldn't stop talking about how awesome he was. I was on the ballot to be one of his delegates when he was running for president. I would love to see that happen. But we've got a pretty good roster right now, Democrats up and down. I think there will be some interesting choices coming up in 2024, especially if President Biden decides not to run.
Yeah.
Do you think he should or should not run? From my end, no surprise. For his sake and the Democratic Party's sake, because I don't know how inclined they are to support the incumbent, but man, I would say don't you run. And It seems like a lot of Democrats in Congress right now are saying the same. They're not saying to run, rather. They're not outright saying don't run.
But don't worry. If the candidate is either a Trump or a DeSantis, it doesn't matter. We're going to unite behind anybody that's not one of those two. Well, actually, it could be a lot of them. But, I mean, those are your odds-on favorite for the presidency. Again, Trump, when people voted in 2020, you have to remember, so there's two reasons why people typically vote, right? It's either prospective voting. I'm voting for this candidate because I think they can do these things. And then there's retrospective voters. I'm voting against this person because of what they've done. Most of 2020 was a retrospective campaign. It was, I just don't like Donald Trump. Every Democrat disliked Donald Trump. And you cannot miss that there's a growing swath of the Republican Party that doesn't like Donald Trump either. To take my word for it, read virtually anything going on in Republican circles right now.
It's true.
That is a party that is wringing its hands over what to do with Trump. It can't now decide on a Kevin McCarthy as a speaker because of how close he was to Donald Trump. Darren Bailey gets shellacked in Illinois because all people saw was Trump light. And the Trump light candidates up and down the line, they got smoked in almost every place in the country, even places where they shouldn't.
And let's be clear, this isn't because he sends out mean tweets, right?
No.
Because he doesn't talk the way we talk. This is because his policies are bad. This is because his values are bad, right? This is because Donald Trump and Trumpism is right-wing extremism. It's misogynist. There are wings of that party that are out racist. There are wings of that party that are anti-Semites. Look what's happening this last week with Kanye and who's that other guy?
Yeah, the guy that he went to dinner with. I have not committed his name to memory for lots of reasons.
The fact that there are wings of the Republican Party that embrace those viewpoints is a serious problem, and that's why we don't like Donald Trump. Not because Donald Trump brought this on. This was a part of our country, our state, that was always kind of lurking there in the depths, right? He just gave them permission to come out in the public, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and two, I think that very clearly the Democratic Party needs a health, and let me back up. The United States of America needs two healthy parties with two healthy viewpoints. our parties and our country are in a best position. This is the pure political scientist and I talking now. When the two parties are exchanging different ideas, but both parties have the values of America at their core. Donald Trump and Trumpism does not have the values of America at its core. It has the values of Trump at its core. Do I believe that, listen, do I think that things would be different if there was a president, I'm trying to think of someone on the Republican side, like a Marco Rubio. I think a Marco Rubio would have been a much more traditional style president. Do I think that I would have disagreed with most things that he says? Yes, but I probably wouldn't have thought that Marco Rubio is a bad person. This is the big difference, and this is what, when I talk to people, this is what I've told them, because I have tons of Republican friends. You've seen me interact with Republican
Scott
friends.
Murphy.
Yeah, Scott Murphy's is a great guy that he and I have. We've had great battles, but we have mutual respect for one another. When it comes time to Trump, this is a guy that if he was in the room, I'd leave. I'm not going to engage in a conversation with a racist, anti-Semite, misogynistic person because you and I share no values. Scott Murphy and I disagree on issues, but we share values. Heck, even Coach Mack and I, who've been at each other's throats over the years, right? We share plenty of values with one another. Do we disagree on issues? Vociferously. But I don't think he's a bad person. I think Donald Trump's a bad human. My mother tried to teach me to don't talk about people that you can't say anything nice about, and Donald Trump maybe is one of the few people that I can't find anything redeeming to say about him. And it sucks. I don't want that to be the case. I never liked Ronald Reagan when I was growing up as a kid, but man, there was a part of me that was always like, man, he's really good at his job. Like you could look at Reagan, and I look back now on, God, I wish we had the Ronald Reagans of the world around.
Do you remember when Democrats thought Mitt Romney was like the Antichrist?
Oh my goodness. I pine for the days of a Mitt Romney, even a George W. Bush. Right. I disagree with your politics, but I never thought that George W. Bush was a bad human. I'm sure there are certain people that certainly did.
And I never, in those previous elections, I never had any doubt if Mitt Romney had been president or John McCain or a handful of other Republican candidates, if they'd become president, I knew they cared about our country. And that was always going to be first and foremost in their decision making.
Yep.
I don't believe that about Donald Trump or people like Donald Trump. Yep. I don't believe that about quite a large number of Republican candidates right now.
I mean, Sharon Chung just beat Scott Preston. Scott Preston, former student of mine. Scott and I have a massive amount of respect for Scott. If Scott had won, I think Scott would have done an admirable job in that position as well. Am I happy that Sharon won? Absolutely. Was I happy to vote for her? Of course. But not all Republicans are like Trump. And my biggest fear is that there are a lot of Republicans who have they don't like Trump either, but they have to shut up because he is still really powerful when it comes time to about a 30% block of the Republican Party. And I want to make sure all of the Republicans that are listening to your radio station right now, hopefully there's a few of them that they just haven't clicked us off already, right? That out of the 100% of Republicans, there are 70% of you that don't like Trump. Please let that 70% speak louder than the 30%. The politician in me wants Trump to win because I know the Democrats can beat him. We have before. He's a winner for us. But for our country, I hope the 70% come to their senses and stop being silent about it, saying he's unacceptable.
I appreciate the sentiment and keeping the sake of the country before the sake of your party.
Totally.
I like that. And hopefully, I hope personally that there'll be a Republican that can do a good job of that because my values tend to align more Republican, my Christian values, and et cetera, et cetera. And I want to ask you guys about a really interesting subject. I don't know where it's going to go, but before that, Patrick, you mentioned something about the right side of the aisle has the extremes, the racists, the homophobes, of everything. For the interest of fairness, though, would you say that the left, too, has extremists that are equally as immoral or bad?
Not immoral or bad. No.
What about...
Do we have extremists? Sure. Every organization, every group does. right? Mm-hmm. But I've never thought that anybody on the left side of things has been immoral.
What about, Antifa and stuff?
Well, Antifa doesn't exist. Antifa is a figment of the Republican imagination.
It is.
People do not have Antifa meetings.
Have you ever met anybody that's in the organization?
No.
I've been a Democrat involved in Democrat politics up and down. I mean, at the national level and at the local level, and at the state level, I have never met a person.
Antifa is right up there with George Soros paychecks.
Yeah.
and all these other conservative myths. It doesn't exist. Antifa is not a group out there causing trouble in our country, in our county. It just isn't happening.
It's a philosophy, isn't it? That's the whole thing, because it's not a group. It's not a group that meets regularly. It's not like the Rotary Club or anything.
No.
It's a dangerous philosophy.
Antifa stands for anti-fascism. You know who else was an anti-fascist? We were in World War II.
Right. My guess is you're an anti-fascist. I know you're an anti-fascist. I'm an anti-fascist. Fascism is... Let's talk about fascist leaders. I mean, the only fascist leaders that we know of, the Adolf Hitlers, Benito Mussolini, Rocco, these aren't people that any of us in this country should be like, yeah, they were okay, just misunderstood. But again, Patrick hit the nail on the head. Antifa's not. It's such a great example of making organizations up that aren't really a thing. I don't know of.
But there are people that do say, they get in this trouble. You see them on, I wish I could recall this better, but people do say that they are with Antifa, whatever that means.
I couldn't name. Could you name a single name? I can't.
I couldn't.
And I would love to give you one just because it would be good for the conversation. I don't know of any to give to people. Do I think that it's been a great talking point that gives people... we had talked about the power of the media before, right? If you're listening, right, and I don't want to pick yes, I do, right? If you're watching Fox News and Fox News uses the phrase, I guarantee you, the phrase Antifa is used pretty exclusively on Fox News and probably other, Newsmax and other organizations like that. It's not found in any mainstream media, which of course has also been demonized as being as a bastion of the left, which I've always laughed about. And as far as even some of the more moderate sort of middle of the road, they don't use the term Antifa either, unless they're referencing other news reports from other organizations such as Fox News. It's a great talking point, though.
Can we talk real quick while we're on this topic about the trend of conservatives to always have to have a boogeyman to attack against, as opposed to talking about their ideas and their philosophies and what they want to see done? Right? So it's Antifa, locally it's Mike Madigan, it's Nancy Pelosi, it's whoever. There's always seems to be a boogeyman that conservatives want to rail against, fight against.
Do the Democrats have the same thing, though?
No.
Insurrection, Donald Trump.
Well, that happened.
But those are real things.
Right. But do you think that they're exaggerated to the point that they are a scary monster? And let's bring this up whenever we can.
They attacked our Capitol. Yeah. They killed people.
Yeah. The insurrection, of course,
Did they kill people? Look, I'm not some insurrection supporter. I've always been confused at, is it technically an insurrection? Has it been filed at, or whatever that means, filed as?
The gentleman was just convicted this week. Of seditious conspiracy.
Yeah.
Hey, look, I'm not trying to defend. I'm saying, was it called an insurrection?
Yes. But are we then arguing semantics? Does it matter what it was called?
Right.
You watched what happened that day. Was what happened that day good for America?
No.
I don't care if you call it a rabid group of football fans that lost their mind that day. I don't care what you call it. You can call it, tree fairies, yard gnomes, and flying spaghetti monsters for all I care. That was bad for America. That was really bad for America. We had people who stormed our Capitol, who injured our Capitol Police, the same people who profess to love, who back the blue and then attack the blue.
And that happened.
That did.
They attacked the
police officers.
There's video evidence.
Yeah, I mean, it's
people have been convicted of that. Who've gone to a court of law and been convicted of that assault.
And I know why the right wants to try and make it seem like that wasn't a big deal. I guarantee you, if it had been anything like that on the left, this would have been
without a doubt.
It absolutely would have been attacked. And at the end of the day, it's not even just the left. I mean, I still giggle. I'm a childhood friend of Adam Kinzinger. Adam Kinzinger is as conservative as they come. That somehow this guy has now been made out to be a leftist cracks me up. Liz Cheney is now considered by the right to be a leftist. Liz Cheney. She voted with Trump 90+% of the time. She is not a leftist in any way, shape, or form. But what they were rational. This is bad for America. We have to admit this was bad for America first, right? This is like AA step number 1, right? You've got to admit that you have a problem. Mm-hmm. You can't fix it unless you admit it.
Right, and I guess I always just see these videos, right, of the insurrection. I've always been confused why it was the day that hell was on earth or something, because when I see these videos, it looks like people taking a stroll through the Capitol, and there's people opening the doors for them that look like government officials. And then you see the guy standing at the podium.
Did you watch any of the testimony, the January 6th committee?
To be completely honest.
Then you need to look at that.
Yeah.
And I'll be happy to send you along. They did a video kind of montage. And I'll send that along to you of some of the events that happened that
It was more than just being led in a door. I mean, there were people picking up chairs and smashing in windows. And
using flags to break glass and pummel Capitol Police officers.
Yeah, I mean, it's all there.
Media will show you what they want to show you, I guess, huh?
Because at the end of the day, media is always attempting to craft a narrative. And just like anything else, right? So I had a good conversation with a friend of mine in the fitness industry who is, Huberman's really good at talking about this sometimes. Before you look at any piece of research, first look at who sponsored the research. I'm not saying that just who sponsored it is right, but if you find out that someone says that taking aspartame, which I actually believe is not a big deal,
artificial
sweeteners, but then you see that who paid for the study, that it was
the sugar industry?
that it was Cargill or someone who actually manufactures aspartame, then you've got to kind of go,
Sure.
Is it incumbent upon both the left to play up big time the insurrection? Yes. Is it also part of the right to downplay the insurrection? Sure. Without a doubt.
But it doesn't change the facts of what actually happened.
It happened. It happened, and it was, again, that's why I asked the first question. Was it bad for America?
Sure.
That day was bad for America. If something's bad for America, then we need to fix it.
Sure.
Period. And people should be held accountable for doing bad things.
And I don't have a dog in this race. I mean, I am learning about the insurrection. That's one thing I didn't dive deeply into.
But you do, Paul. You're an American. You're an American citizen. You ought to have a dog in this race.
But I mean, I'm not defending the
insurrection.
insurrection.
Put up a gallows and go in there actively looking to find the vice president so they can hang him to stop the legal transfer of government.
Chanting.
Is a problem.
Hang him.
Chanting, hang Mike Pence.
Right.
Which Mike Pence, last time I checked, not a bastion of the left. Like
that's a problem, and we've got to figure out how to.
Yeah, this was the right actually revolting against the right, which is a much bigger question. Like, I don't know why that doesn't get more play than what it actually does. I mean, this was where a president actually was encouraging people that he knew, and he was whipping them into a frenzy, that he knew that their intention was to cause harm. If they had gotten a hold of Mike Pence that day, I wonder what would have happened. I really do.
Same with Nancy Pelosi, right? I mean, look, we just had an assassination attempt on the third. Is it third in line?
Yes.
For our government.
Yep.
Right. She wasn't home, so they attacked her husband instead. I'm shocked that we haven't made more out of that. Right.
What an interesting story that was. And Elon Musk shared a bad link to that on Twitter, too, to a false story.
Yep.
That is interesting. Were they both in their underwear? This guy and...
I don't know, but I have a
think
weird
if we're
mental
talking
picture
about
now.
that, we're missing the point.
We are missing the
Sure.
forest
An
of the trees.
assassination attempt on a high-standing member of our government.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's a really scary thing. Like, again, fascist countries are the ones that eliminate their opposition. That's what fascist companies do. If you fought Adolf Hitler, your family went on vacation for forever. Mm-hmm. In our country, it is your constitutional right to disagree with government. You can say, I don't like Joe Biden. I think he's a stumbling, bumbling, gaffe moron. Great. That's your constitutional right. Free speech. Say whatever it is that you want. But our freedoms end once they start to cause harm to other people. When you go into a gentleman's house, looking for his wife, with a hammer, and you hit an elderly man with a hammer, that's violence. When you shoot at Gabby Giffords, when you try and kidnap the governor of Michigan.
Right. It will be fair. It happens, on both sides, right? When you
Brett Kavanaugh,
you shoot Steve Scalise, right?
Without
in a congressional baseball game. Same thing. That's not right.
And that man should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
Agreed.
I don't care what political party it is. We cannot resort to violence. If you don't like somebody, that's one thing. But causing them physical harm is another thing.
I think we can all agree on that, probably.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
There we go, uniting.
How many
point.
questions have we missed?
I was going to say.
Oh, man, it's not strict. We don't have to stick to this. We're finding other interesting tangents to go off of whatever question. We've covered a few, actually, on accident.
Awesome.
One thing I do want to ask about, and this is something we probably don't agree on, but maybe we do. We'll see. It's the Democratic Party is certainly the party of the LGBTQ support. Mm-hmm. One thing that I can't wrap my head around, and perhaps I'm always willing to say maybe someone can convince me otherwise. I have an open ear to mostly anything, even absurd things. I'll just sort through it rationally, hopefully. But the transgender movement right now, it is very popular. It has been the past few years, especially, and this is what I'm most concerned about, is the transgender reconstructive surgery or just the transgender ideology, believing you are in fact trans, among adolescents and children. I think, and this is me, I'll go ahead and just say my thinking. I think kids are insanely, what's the word? Starts with a P. Impressionable. It doesn't start with a P, but impressionable.
Sure.
And they're on social media more than any of us could ever imagine. Even me. I don't even have Twitter or TikTok, but they are on TikTok like you wouldn't believe. These are their heroes. These are the people that they mold their ideas and their conceptions about the world around. They hear them talk about life more than they hear their parents. Even good homes where the parents are married, they hear these TikTokers talk about it more than their parents. Talk about it. I'm talking about life, but I'm also talking about the transgender movement. I know multiple kids, this is crazy to me, who now go by a different name of another gender, really of the other sex. Gender, I understand from a psychological standpoint, technically would be on a spectrum. My conservative friends hate when I say that, but really it's where you lie on the standards of masculinity, femininity. And technically speaking, you could draw any arbitrary, albeit points anywhere and say this is the name of this point, this is the name of this point, blah, blah, blah. But I think that this is something like a craze. I do, among kids, because kids are, again, so impressionable and they buy into crazes. And who buys into crazes among those kids most? It's these girls. And girls are the ones reporting being trans more than young boys. And I just think that's something that we need to nip in the butt, or it will go away in the next few years. But to suggest that maybe it's a good idea to have children, give them the opportunity to demand a reconstructive surgery when they're a kid at the same age that I believe there was a Santa Claus, I think that is a massive, massive problem. What do you guys think? I had the camera on you two that whole time. Yeah. Sorry, everybody.
That's okay.
So my response is just going to be really quick. First, I'm going to dispute that this is some kind of new fashion thing. This has been going on for decades and decades and decades. It may be getting more public attention right now, but this is not a new concept or a new idea. I think you're seeing more conversation about this because society is a little more open to letting people do this. But to answer your question, I think people absolutely have the right to become their true, authentic selves, whatever that means. Stop, period.
Yep.
Wait, bro. Sorry.
Ooh, we got a bro drop.
If you're a kid, though, if you're 12 years... Dude, I believed in Santa when I was 10, and there are 10-year-olds saying, this is
Spoiler
serious.
alert for any children watching right now.
Yeah,
We're
sorry
very
about
sorry.
Yeah, but no, really, when I was 10, I believed a lot of weird things, not the least of which was Santa Claus, but I don't know what else I believed. Maybe I didn't believe too many crazy
Do I think people need to have real conversations with people they trust and whose opinions they value and who are knowledgeable about all that? Yes.
But how about you don't let your kid get a reconstructive, permanent, life-altering, biology-altering, psychology-altering surgery right now when they're 10 on, I'll call it a whim because they are so young. Just wait until they're 18 and they can do it, and then you can do whatever you want with your body. But why not just say, how about you don't get the surgery when you're 10, and that's not actually allowed?
Paul, can we agree that you, nor I, nor Patrick know the inner workings of individual children and or their families?
I don't think we can agree on that because I think children in general, we do have a really good idea of their psychology and their psychological makeup.
Man.
And that's not me saying that. That's not some conservative opinion. That's psychology at large. That's why you can have a whole field of child psychology because it is so general.
I would say as a guy who actually has children, they're all very unique individuals. I can only imagine my philosophy on whatever you choose to identify yourself with, whether that's gay, straight, trans, I mean, you name it, is that's your choice. I believe that every individual freely has the right to choose. If, in fact, I don't believe, and I have yet to meet anyone who has actually gone through any type of gender reassignment surgery who has done so and did it because they watched TikTok and it's a whim. I think it is a very serious undertaking. I think it's a very serious endeavor. I think that those families that do even allow their children, and I don't know the statistics on how many children are actually having gender reassignment surgery. I don't know.
It's a difficult number to come across, but there are other numbers that I'll say.
At the end of the day, I have one overriding policy in my life. It's don't be a dick. Okay? And that philosophy means I don't tell you what to do with your life and your body. You get to choose to do that, because for me to impose my will upon you makes me a jerk. It just does. It is between you and your family, between you and your doctor, between you and your friends. And this runs the gamut, right? This runs into abortion. This runs into everything. How a person chooses to live their life. Again, if you truly believe in freedom, and I think this is a funny, or not funny, is probably not the way to do it. I think it's ironic that the very groups of people that I hear having the biggest problems with this are also the people that tend to say that they are the most freedom-loving Americans that are out there.
Right.
If you truthfully value freedom, let a person live their life in any way that they choose. As long as they don't cause harm to another person.
I understand that. That. I completely understand that. It makes a lot of sense what you are saying.
Yeah.
However, there is a difference in just letting everyone, first of all, let adults do whatever they want to do so long as they don't hurt other people.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. There's a little girl getting her boobs cut off, and they're never coming back, and her biology is being altered because she thought a thing for a really long time. And you have kids. Do you both have kids?
I do not.
Okay, so you have kids, though, Eric, and presumably they're young kids because you're a young guy. They can be insanely stubborn and persistent in what they believe. This is true. This is me. I've seen it, Eric. I've seen it. I've seen kids at swim practice. You talked about this coach Mac. I think he was a swim coach or something. I remember a couple years ago there was, what was that? Football. Okay, there's some other anyway.
Yeah, that's okay.
There is a kid. He says, "No, yeah, I'm a girl. I'm a boy, my name's whatever, but I am a girl. My parents say I am gender dysphoric, so if you could call me by my girl name, that's fine." And I believe that kid just wound up kind of fading out of that. But they can get so sure of these things. Kids really believe things about themselves, and they will throw a tantrum, and sometimes that's enough to get what they want. I'm not trying to be a jerk here. I'm really not.
And I wasn't saying you were.
But you could have.
Yeah, I could have.
And people would have agreed with you.
And I think what you're describing is a parenting issue, and I'm not qualified to give this advice because I'm not a parent. There's only one person at this table that can talk about that, right?
Right.
So I think what you're describing is then that's up to the parents to have those conversations with their kids, right? And hopefully they're well informed and will do the research and do whatever it takes to make sure that those kinds of decisions are made fully understanding all the facts of what we're talking about. But to Erik's point, right? But even if that doesn't happen, right? If that child goes through that process, how does that affect you at all?
Well, no, here's the thing. It's because we care for our fellow human being.
Sure.
You have a freedom to go in your backyard and kick the crap out of your dog. Right?
That's actually illegal, but that's...
Well, no, but that's the freedom to do what you want to do. And if you kick your dog...
You can't, because, again, you're free to do things as long as those things aren't against the law. Right?
So it's against the law to kick your dog.
It is. That is illegal.
All right. Well, touche there then.
don't kick your dog, everybody that's listening.
But how about you go along with your kid's crazy idea? And I'll say it's a crazy idea to do that when they're 10 years old, to say that I thought crazy things. I really did when I was 10. I'm sure you guys did too. I remember going on the playground and some girls swearing to me they were a dragon.
What I can tell you is that this conversation being had between three straight men is the worst conversation we can have.
Agreed.
It's just
someday you really ought to have somebody.
I've had two.
I've
had two trans people on the show.
Yeah.
Oh, have you? Okay,
and we've talked about this.
And that's where I always do struggle with when straight people are having conversations about people in the LGBTQ. And I also don't love the idea of calling things movements. As Patrick said beforehand, it negates the fact that it was always there. It has become, obviously, as science has become more prevalent, gender reassignment surgery is actually possible, where in the past that was not something that could be done. So if you want to put that part of a movement, then okay, maybe that's a scientific thing more than anything else. But it's just, I think that this is something that I'm surprised that we're wrapped up in this. I can't tell you. The only thing, if I wake up in the morning, the only thing that I think about, my graduate assistant is gay. All I want to do is support her. I don't care. Patrick's straight. All I want to do is support him. So are you. I don't care how somebody else chooses to live their life. I can't. I just want to support you and wherever you're at. I understand what you're doing. You're more worried about children making, yes.
Life-altering changes for the worse that they're going to regret and can't do anything about later.
And do I think is that a possibility? Sure. Can we also posit the reverse to that? That maybe there is the possibility that child who got that gender reassignment surgery now is going to be able to live a much better, much more authentic life than what they had before. That without that surgery,
I think that's tough to say.
That it's possible that child would have been, which again statistics will bear me out here, would be depressed or highly anxious, would be prone to suicide because they don't understand how to operate in the body that they've been given. And if that surgery staves off their suicide and allows them to live their full authentic self, shouldn't we all be in the business of allowing people to live their full authentic selves?
I hear what you're saying, right? That's the biggest argument from the Democratic side, the left side. I get it.
We don't need to cite a political party.
Yeah, I think it's just more of a...
I mean, for the most part, it is Democrats far more than Republicans. I would say that most Democrats probably would support what you're saying, and most Republicans certainly would not. And most Republicans are
I think the better way of saying that is people with a sense of empathy and support that. And do people with a sense of empathy tend to be Democrats? Sure.
And I will tell you, Patrick and I are probably around more people because of just who's members of our party. I'm a straight, white, cisgender male. I don't understand what it's like to be gay. I don't understand what it's like to be black. I don't understand what it's like to be a woman. The only way that I can understand the plight of individuals that are not like myself is to spend time around individuals and to let them speak. When we talk about women's issues, guys, get out of the way. Listen to women, right? When we are talking about, gay right issues, get out of the way and listen to gay people. What do you need? What do you need in order to be happy and successful?
I hear you, right? I hear you, and it makes a lot of sense until you get to the trans issue. Why do I say that? Why would I ever say something like that? Gay, LGB, especially LG, gay, yeah. Those are different than trans. They are much different, and there's a lot of animosity within
Different
the LGBT.
how?
Different how? Because one is you are most likely born that way. I believe you're born. Well, you're not really born. You're born with the tools that are going to develop into, or the details about your DNA, I guess, or will develop into a certain kind of attraction. That's one thing.
Okay.
However, being transgender does incorporate gender dysphoria, which is still in the DSM-5, which is the Diagnostic Statistic Manual of Mental Illness. It is, your mind is at odds with reality. And look, lesbians really do not like the trans movement right now. A lot of them. Enough to say a lot. Right? A large chunk of lesbians don't like it. Why?
I haven't spoken to a large number of lesbians, but
right.
But
I've listened to a lot of them talk about it, and they're especially mad with biological men being able to compete as women in sports because women are getting smoked. I would go to Stanford because I dated a girl that was there for a while, and her swimmer friends were very serious about swimming, and one of them recently lost to a biological man, and she had trained her whole life to get this national title. And she was mad, and she was as liberal as they come.
Sure.
And then I don't know I have not spoken personally to the lesbians, but I've heard a lot of interviews of them picketing outside of sports events where there is a trans female athlete. And they're upset about it, and they have every right to be. I think it's dangerous when you lump these people together because being gay and being lesbian are different than being trans. I really believe that, and especially so when you look at the child level. Kids before they're hitting puberty are saying, I need this surgery. And and it's an ongoing study because this is only a recent thing in the past few years. And I say it's a surge, right? How inconsiderate of me, or a craze even. Why would I say that? In Britain, where they have centralized medicine or centralized healthcare, they can look at the amount of transgender surgeries or trans reassignment procedures of some sort going on, and those have gone up more than 10x in the past few years, from like 2012 to 2016 compared to 2016 to 2020. 2016 to 2020, there's like 10x more than the 4 years prior.
But isn't that also
nuts?
It's possible that part of that is because it's more socially acceptable.
Oh, right. Yes, this is what you said, Patrick. You said it's just like when people came out as gay, what was it, 2015 with the gay marriage being legalized, or was it before that?
With the Obergefell.
Yes. Well, this is so much higher magnitude than the amount of people coming out then, and it's so much higher now, and it's also among a very young demographic. You'd think that there'd be just as many 60-year-old people saying, finally, I'm out.
I will say that these numbers are also still infinitesimally small. I mean,
I wish I could confirm or deny.
Yeah, we're not talking about large swaths of people. And that's another thing that always, we in this country do like to focus on minutia and then try and extrapolate out like writ large, right? That was, listen, I've been teaching for better part of over 2 decades now. Teaching when in the beginning of teaching, or even when I was an undergrad myself, when Don't Ask, Don't Tell was put into place, I always was fascinated by the number of people that believed that. I asked, they said, well, if we legalize gay marriage, what do you think happens tomorrow? And people were, well, I just don't know. I mean, does it harm your marriage? Well, no. Why do you care?
Society at large, the effects that it could have on the world in which we live.
But
what effects?
But if tomorrow somebody who's gay gets married, I don't know how it affects me at large in any way, shape, or form. I mean,
and certainly gay marriage does not affect me.
But if you had lived during that time period. This is the benefit of your youth. There were people like the hyperbole was real. They believed that if gay people were allowed to get married, it would lead to, and it was the same argument, that it would lead to the defall and or the fall and destruction of American civilization. Like, we would seriously crumble as a country if we let, Bob and Steve get married. And what did we find out when Bob and Steve got married? Nothing. Nobody cares.
We had happy Bob and Steve.
Like, it didn't matter. They were gay before, and they were living as if they were married. It's just now we allowed them to spend time with one another in the hospital in the end of their days. We allowed them to adopt children.
That might be bank accounts.
Right. They had to have joint bank accounts to, generally be functional citizens. I always used to, laugh at my students. I said, hey, listen, guys, if you really don't like gay marriage, the best thing you can do is allow them to get married. And everybody looked at me funny. I said, what do you mean? Well, if straight people suck at it so bad that more than 50% of all marriages end in divorce, if you really want to screw gay marriage, just let them get married, and so they can be as miserable as all of the straight people are. Because 50% of us screw it up as well. Again, and this, to me, let's go back to conservatism, right? Take the religious part out of it. Conservatism, less government. Should government tell us who we can and cannot get married to?
Nope. I would even say, technically speaking, no.
You can't.
I'm not against.
Right.
I mean, personally, first of all, the sacrament of matrimony, holy matrimony, technically could not be.
Right.
But if you want to say
based on Catholicism,
exactly.
Right.
Based on, which is where we get marriage from, the word marriage from matrimony, which was made famous by and instituted by the Catholic Church. Anyway, technical. If you want to make it legally binding that you two stick together, you can get your joint bank account. I don't care.
Who cares?
As long as they're an adult, two adults.
You got it. Now, same thing has to be said. When it comes time to gender reassignment surgery and anything like that, the freedom part of it, should government tell a parent what they can and cannot do with their child?
I would say they prohibit child abuse, and I'd say this is a weird line. I say you're getting into child abuse potentially.
Okay, I think that some people who homeschool their children and are teaching them things that are maybe not the best, I think that's child abuse.
Sure. Well, there's a difference. We just have to hash out which is actually child abuse.
Right.
I know plenty of people that are one that you can homeschool in a manner that is considered child abuse.
Sure.
It's possible. I think cutting off genitalia at the age before puberty is child abuse.
I don't think that you probably would get a lot of argument, and I don't know, because again, I would like to talk more to individuals that are directly affected by this. I think that, having that surgery wait until you're 18 probably wouldn't be a game changer.
What do you mean by that?
That I don't think that I don't think you would see wholesale revolution that this is destroying the rights of humans if we said, before you make this type of decision, you need to be 18 years old.
Hey,
right?
Dude, you think,
right?
Eric?
I don't know.
I think there'd be a big backlash against you.
I personally,
I'm on your side.
Yeah, I actually, not on my side. I personally don't care, right? Okay. I think that we have to treat those things as individuals.
Sure.
If I have if there's a kid who is 15 who has probably, my guess is that person's worked with a therapist because they have some. Again, I want to make sure that we're very cognizant of the fact. Could you imagine being born into this world? You're supposed to be a male, right? You have all the equipment that makes you a male. Your parents treated you as a male. Society treats you as a male. And you have this gnawing feeling that it's all wrong, right? You don't feel like this. You start to disintegrate at school because you can't make friends, it's hard because kids are mean and say and do terrible things to kids who are perceived as being different or not part of the norm. I could only imagine the psychological and physical trauma that causes those kids.
It must be terrible.
It has to be. And if reassignment surgery is what allowed them to start living, again, we keep coming back to this, to allow them to live their authentic self and their life is made better for it, I'm all for it. I let parents make those decisions for their children. I think as a parent, I don't want anybody telling me how I should raise my child.
Sure.
As long as I'm not causing them harm. Now here's your line of, I think this is causing harm. And I guess that we've got to have a bigger discussion about it.
Right.
Again, with not just 3 straight guys.
Right. Understood. I understand that completely. And yeah, I mean, my big thing is there are kids like that, and there's a difference between people who get the trans reassignment surgery. That some have always felt this way, but I think the majority, and I don't have the numbers on this, but you hear stuff and you see stuff, right? I've coached at a high school, and you see stuff and you hear stuff there, which is actually a pretty good way to keep your thumb on these things and what's going on with this age group at large. You know, if someone's been believing this their whole life, that's one thing, but I think the majority haven't been believing it their whole life, and their parents are confused. Like, what in the world? You were just boyish as they come when you were a kid. Boyish, whatever that means, but you never expressed any discomfort like this. I think that's just problematic, and we should probably move on from the topic. I really appreciate you guys diving in.
Let's see how you're going to pivot. I want to see the pivot. Where do we go to from this?
Sure. Okay. Let's see here. Well, I had one more pretty rough one. We'll just dive in for it. What time is it, by the way?
It is 11:45.
11:45. We've been talking like what?
Hour and a half.
Hour and a half.
Like
all right.
I got about
guys.
15 minutes.
Well, I was gonna ask about abortion, but we're gonna have to skip it. I think. I want to ask you guys this. We'll end on a nice note
here. We'll come back another time and have that conversation.
I would love to.
Again, it shouldn't be 3 guys talking about it. But
sure.
If we're talking about that issue.
Yeah. Sure. My question would be, is this Democrats' best legislative accomplishments? What have they been? What have the Democrats
Are you talking statewide, locally, or
everything?
Federal level?
At the state level and at the federal level.
Do that in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Legislative accomplishments. Well, so I think like in the last couple of years or ever.
Yeah, we'll limit it to like the last decade or two.
Oh, my.
Since the 2000s or so.
You start, Erik.
So since the 2000s, legislative, right? So every law that you have on the books currently that is dealing with gay rights, that is so expanding gay rights, allowing gays to get married, expanding marijuana policies, pretty much starting at the state level, but is now percolated all the way up to the top. Student loan forgiveness programs, I think, are awesome if hopefully some legal hurdles will get out of their way. I think that Obamacare is probably one of the biggest.
That was going to be mine, right?
I think healthcare.
I think expanding healthcare and trying to get as many people able to get that, and that's probably state and federal level.
Yep. State level expansion of Pell Grants, expansion of MAP grants to allow more people of lower socioeconomic statuses to go to college. Huge.
Can we talk about fiscal responsibility?
Absolutely.
The work that this administration has done in getting our state finances back in order.
Yep.
The work that Comptroller Mendoza has done has been absolutely incredible.
Balancing budgets, paying down debt across the board. Working on issues of safety and security, being able to work on funding for better policing tactics. So making our police forces accountable. Making and hopefully this is one of the things when the Safety Act is actually fully passed and tinkered, so it's actually really good. Of getting money out of the cash bail system is fantastic. Your time in jail shouldn't be based upon your ability to pay your way out of it. I think that the continuing success of expansions and things, especially under Joe Biden, where he went back to fully funding our national parks and our national resources, again, expansion of things, just even here locally, and that's a Democrat and Republican initiative.
Can we talk about
Yep.
some of the efforts by Democrats to make voting easier, not
Yes,
harder? More
please.
people should be participating in democracy, right? And so places around the country and here in Illinois where we're making voting easier for
Yep,
folks,
yep.
right? The
Mail-in voting.
the permanent mail-in
Yep.
ballot status,
Yep.
I think is huge. It gives people that opportunity to really participate in our democracy.
Same-day voter registration,
Right.
of expanding the electorate up and down the line. There have been bipartisan efforts. So Republicans tend to be the party that always gets the tax breaks. There have been Democratic administrations right here in Illinois who have passed multiple tax breaks for people at all levels of the tax brackets.
And here in the state, I think passing enshrining a women's right to choose
Without a doubt.
in our state laws, and what we just did this last November, right? Union rights, right? The work that our state has done to enshrine and protect unions has been really impressive.
Patrick, how many presidential candidates and presidents have we heard that have talked about passing a major infrastructure bill?
Right.
Is there a president that actually passed an infrastructure
That would
bill?
be President Biden.
Well, that's really weird that that happened.
Who's administrating that
That
infrastructure?
might be Secretary Pete Buttigieg, who is doing a great job of helping us rebuild our roads, our bridges, fixing our interstates. These were things that didn't get done beforehand. The Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act,
Right.
Under Obama, of helping to close the gap between men and women in terms of wages.
And going back to infrastructure real quick, let's talk about how the money that J.B. Pritzker in the Illinois State Legislature is directed right here to McLean County. Millions and millions of dollars for our roads. We're investing in Illinois State University. We're investing in Heartland College with new technologies, right? They've got a whole new school out there, how to deal with and build and fix electric vehicles. That's huge.
Anybody that's enjoyed taking the Amtrak to either Chicago or St. Louis or over to Indianapolis.
That was Democrats.
You probably went over
Democrats
to
did
the
that.
yeah they certainly did through the Tiger Grant that allowed the multimodal transportation center to be built downtown.
And you probably saw
Uptown,
some of those amazing wind farms along your ride, right?
Weird, huh?
Wind farms that use up a small amount of farmland but bring in millions of dollars in tax revenue for
Without a
the
doubt.
citizens of McLean.
Now, I will say Republicans in McLean County joined Democrats in doing that. That was all Democrats and a good chunk of Republicans. There were still some Republicans that were against wind farms, but Democrats have been for renewable energy, expansion of credits for people purchasing electric vehicles. It was a great effort to be able to bring new industries here to McLean County, like Rivian, which has done awesome for us. I mean, it's brought money into this community. The tax abatements are about ready to end for Rivian, which is going to be hopefully a good
Let's
windfall.
not forget,
for
there's
our
some folks
Unit
running for
5.
local office right now that were against Rivian
Yep.
being here.
Yep.
And if they had been in office at that point,
Then it would have been a different story. I was very rarely you'll see me pat myself on the back for legislative accomplishments, but I was on the county board when we voted to abate Rivian's taxes, and it was the right decision. There were some of my Republican colleagues that didn't agree, but all of the Democrats voted in favor of it. So that's I think, and I could probably sit here with Patrick and do this a lot longer.
It's very enjoyable
right?
to listen
Yeah,
to. It
I mean,
is.
Right.
and that's the thing at the end of the day. I think Democrats do an incredible job of governing. We don't always do the best at campaigning. Republicans do a better job at campaigning than Democrats do because Republicans tend to campaign in black and white. Yes or no? I mean, we can go up and down.
I mean, you're
right?
going to say, I think Republicans do a terrible
Yeah.
job campaigning.
They've done a bad job lately, but Republicans are always the black and white party. Guns, yes, right? Abortion, no. Taxes, no. Democrats are the party of nuance. It's do you believe in the Second Amendment? Well, listen, I believe that, and we're going to have a 15-minute conversation about what the Second
Which
Amendment
is what it
means.
takes, I would say.
We're the party
You gotta
of
explain
gray,
yourself.
but I would argue that that's because our country lives in the gray.
Exactly.
Very rarely
Right.
do we come down to black and white issues. We just don't.
We can agree there, man. People get mad at me all the time on the conservative side because, look, I'm a devout Catholic. I am conservative. I'm not conservative. It's not a religion.
Right.
You know, I'm not like I will believe this way always forever. I'm very conservative, though.
Mm-hmm.
To be frank, I am very conservative. But the fact that I can't just automatically say everything that's on the conservative ballot, I'll call it just this doctrine, rattle it off all the time. It's complicated. Everything's gray. Everything exists on a spectrum. Nothing's quite so black and white.
Nope.
Yeah.
Not one bit. And then for people that try and live there, they're almost always wrong. It just, and then if there is a truth, it's that we don't live in black and white times.
Sure.
And I would probably argue we never have lived in black and white times.
Right. Well, guys, gentlemen, thank you both so much for coming on today.
Awesome.
This conversation was riveting. I loved it. My head is about to explode because I'm thinking of all the things we didn't talk about. Abortion, voter ID laws, et cetera, J.B. Pritzker. There's so much.
Yep.
And it was really fun talking to you guys. I really respect you as well. You're intelligent. You're great at concisely articulating your points. It was really a lot of fun. And to everyone watching this episode, thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed it, if you found it educational, enlightening, or anything else, tell us in the comments. Give it a like, give it a share, subscribe on YouTube, everything else. And thank you very much. And God bless and have a great week.
Awesome.
Thanks for having us, Paul.
Thanks, buddy.
Of course. And that's a wrap.